A few months ago, I asked you guys what your burning nutrition questions are. And for today's video, I picked out 50 of the most common questions that I saw pop up a lot, and I'm going to go through every single one of them. Let's dive into it. My name's Autumn. I'm a certified clinical nutritionist with my master's nutrition human performance, and today's video is sponsored by Thrive Market. More on them in a bit. Okay, the first question comes from Guylaine, and Guylaine is asking how to determine one's goal weight. So I don't really love using weight as the goal. I don't find that to be the best measurement. However, in my undergrad for nutrition, they gave a rough way to estimate someone's goal weight, or goal range rather. So for women, you start off with 100 pounds, and for every inch they have over 5 foot, you add 5 pounds. So if you're like 5'2", then that would be 110. And then from there, you do 10% up and 10% down to get the ideal range. So starting with that 110, then it would be like an extra 10% up. So what is that? 121, and then 1199, right? Yeah, so it'd be 99 to 121 if you were 5'2". So if you're 5'5", you take that 5 extra inches, multiply that by 5, that's 25, add that to the 100, there's 125. Do 10% on each side, and that's the range. It's super rough. It's not an exact measurement at all. Instead, I like to look at true body composition measurements. That's where I like to use the InBody, so it's a really great resource. Okay, next question is from Unknown, and she or he says, I am dairy and gluten-free. Any tips for more protein at breakfast when I can't do cottage cheese, yogurt, etc., and don't want to do protein powder every day? So some quick ideas that come to the top of my head. Scrambled eggs, hard-boiled eggs. Salmon lox is also another great one. That's like more of a traditional breakfast item. A plant-based yogurt, just making sure that it is higher in protein. So Kite Hill has a Greek-style yogurt that does have, I think, 19 grams per serving. Breakfast sausage, and then obviously still, if you do want to use some protein powder, you could have something like a smoothie or chia pudding as well. Okay, this next one is also from Unknown. I've started weightlifting consistently, 14-10 intermittent fasting, and prioritizing protein. I've noticed now that if I don't eat every 3 to 4 hours, I start to get hangry, and I've never been one to get hangry. Is that normal? Yes. When you first start weight training, your body is putting on more muscle, especially when you are very first starting. Your body's going to be a lot more responsive to that muscle. Even if you don't visually see it, you are going to be building muscle in that process. So because of that, muscle is very metabolically expensive, which means that you need to eat more food to recover and maintain that, aka the hunger or hanger. So that's why increasing the amount that you eat is really important when you are strength training. Okay, so from Camille, we have anything different we should do with our first meal post-workout after a particularly strenuous workout. Definitely electrolytes, have enough water. You wanna make sure that you're getting both of those because typically with a strenuous workout, you are releasing a lot more water, a lot more sodium, so you wanna prevent the muscle cramps. You shouldn't need to adjust your protein too much. I like to just make sure that's consistent every single day. But if you do find that you are still more hungry, you could add another serving of fat, or if you're not carb sensitive, you could add an extra serving of some type of carbohydrate, preferably like low, medium glycemic load. From the Rural Companion, we have, can you go over portion sizes and rough percentages of protein, carbs, fats for a meal? This really depends on your goal. So if you are looking for fat loss, if you're looking for maintenance, or if you are looking for muscle gain, between each of those goals, protein really shouldn't change that much. And that's because my philosophy with each of those different parts in life is that you should be incorporating some type of strength training and preventing muscle loss anyway. And even if you aren't, you do need to have enough protein to prevent muscle loss while losing weight. For fats, I generally recommend between 1 to 3 servings at every meal. Again, that really depends on the individual, with each serving roughly equating to about 10 grams of fat. So that would be like a half an avocado, half cup of olives, etc. And then with carbs, I found that as long as they are low glycemic load and you're eating enough protein, you're adding in the fat, you can really eat as much as you want of those as long as it's not sacrificing the protein. But if you do want to really deep dive on this, I have so much more information with like the charts, the amounts, the types of food, everything based on your goals within my body recomposition program. So I will have it linked and popped up right here somewhere, as well as linked down description below. That is such an amazing resource. Okay, next up we have Alex Annie Matthew. She's asking, what are your thoughts on gluten and gut health? It's definitely a common gut irritant, especially when it's not properly fermented. Because of that, most people can benefit from removing gluten, or at the very least making sure that they're using properly fermented gluten sources. So that would be like sourdough bread that is naturally fermented because it does break down that gluten. But just eating a ton of gluten in the non-fermented form can be a gut irritant for pretty much everybody. From weight.e, we have light low carb beers. If we're going to drink them, are they a good choice? So I looked into how these are really made, and apparently they're made by fermenting the beers like more fully, so they are going to be lower in carbs. But typically I usually recommend using something something like a dry farm wine instead. It just tends to be better for most people's GI tracts. So we have Cassie who's saying that she doesn't want to have to make separate meals from her family. So what should she do? Should she just reduce carbs? So what I usually recommend for my clients is always starting off with a meal that is centered around a high quality protein source, and then having that extra side of some type of starchy or carbohydrate that maybe your family really loves, but it's not something that's as in line with your goals at this point, and just having it as like a side addition rather than the main focus of the meal. So for example, you could start off with making something like meatballs, and if your family loves having spaghetti, they can have the spaghetti and you can roast yourself some veggies to go along with it, or do something like the cabbage noodles, which is where you chop up cabbage really thinly and then just saute it up with some olive oil and salt. Really good. Okay, from unknown user, we have, would you suggest capping the amount of dairy in a day as it has a fair amount of carbs? Not all carbs are the same. This is why I don't like to count carbs. I like to do the glycemic load instead, which is really the true measurement of how those carbs are impacting our blood sugar level, which I do have like the whole glycemic load breakdown in the body recomp program that I have linked down description below. But on top of that, fermented dairy is a lot different because when you are fermenting dairy, it's actually breaking down those carbs. So it's not going to be high in carbs. That lactose is no longer lactose, it's lactic acid, which doesn't have that impact on blood sugar the way that lactose would. So as long as dairy is something that you tolerate, it's actually a really great, high quality, nutrient dense food to be including in meals. I love using skyr. It is so high in vitamin K2 and calcium, especially when you get the whole fat form of the skyr, or full fat Greek yogurt. Kefir is another great option. I love using different high protein cheeses or just even regular cheeses. Like cheese is another great aged low lactose food. So unless something like cheese is a trigger food for you where you find it hard to stop eating once you start eating, then having various dairy products can actually be helpful for your goals, especially because it is such a nutrient dense quality source of protein. Which, speaking of high quality foods, I want to give a huge thank you to today's sponsor, Thrive Market. Thrive Market is a really awesome online membership based grocery store, and they're on a mission to make healthy living as easy and accessible and affordable as possible. Plus they're delivered directly to your door, which for myself as a new mom makes my life so much easier. And you can save on every order on high quality brands like Primal Kitchens and Base Culture on their website or on their app. And if you happen to find the price lower someplace else, Thrive Market will match the price, always guaranteeing you the lowest price. Plus orders over $49 have free shipping. One of my favorite things about Thrive Market has always been the filters function that they have on their website, so it can help you to discover different brands that fit your dietary preferences or needs. So if you're plant-based or you're keto or you're gluten-free or you're opting for grass-fed, then you can mark these off to make sure that what you choose fits your needs. And you can have access to foods that you might not be able to find at your local grocery store, all while saving money in the process. In fact, many of the items that I use and that I mentioned throughout this video can actually be found on Thrive Market to make achieving your wellness goals so much easier. And right now you can join Thrive Market today to get 30% off your first order plus a free gift valued up to $60. So make sure you head over to thrivemarket.com/autumnbates for 30% off your first order. I'll also have it linked down in the description below so you don't miss out. Okay, Jamie Living Well is asking the lowdown on all things cholesterol. My goodness, that is a big topic. To sum it up, dietary cholesterol, meaning the cholesterol that you actually eat and get from food, has not been found to actually raise our blood cholesterol. So this was actually something that even back in 2015, the Dietary Guidelines for Americans officially stated. Unfortunately, I think that it just still hasn't fully reached the masses or even all of the doctors. But in terms of blood cholesterol, so like LDL and HDL, there are really a lot of mixed reviews, and the research is certainly nowhere close to settled. There's a lot of research coming out now that LDL-C, which is the LDL that's typically measured in most blood tests, really isn't actually a great biomarker for determining heart health risk. Instead, the various cholesterol ratios tend to be a lot better, so you can always ask your doctor about that method instead. Or looking at LDL particles is also typically going to be a better indicator of heart health. There's also research showing that HDL and triglycerides specifically tend to be better markers of overall heart health risk factors too. There are a few really good books on this coming out pretty much every day, but an older school classic one that really breaks this down is called The Big Fat Surprise, so definitely recommend checking that out if you want to know more about this whole topic. Okay, from Joanna65, we have tips to lose the last 10 pounds. Ultimate goal is 40 pounds, scale is stuck. Especially when we get down to these last like 10 pounds, I don't recommend looking at the scale. I recommend using body fat percentage instead, because when you start to get down to these lower numbers, especially, it's really easy to mix up body fat and muscle mass. You do not want to be losing muscle during this state. Really, ever because it's going to cause a lot of health issues down the line. It's going to cause a decrease in metabolism, make it really hard to maintain that weight loss because you have to keep eating less and less and less in order to maintain that. So I really encourage you to just not look at the scale first and foremost, but instead look at body fat percentage with something like the InBody. From there, a few simple tips I found is definitely incorporating strength training. It's a really great tool, making sure that you're getting more walking in. So about 10 to 12,000 steps per day for a lot of people tends to do the trick. Eating enough high quality protein, typically between 30 to 45 grams of high quality complete protein at each and every meal. For most people, that can really range though. And sticking with lower glycemic load, each of those strategies can really help. Okay, from Ella, we have how often would you recommend to take a tape measurement or InBody? You don't want to be doing this every week. I found ideally about every couple of weeks, maybe like anywhere between 2 to 6 weeks is a good range. That allows you to see the progress you're making and make sure that you can make changes as necessary, but also not be so stuck to those numbers that it's going to mess with your psyche. Okay, next up we have Sure Enough, top supplements for people trying to stick to low carb. Definitely Element. I talk about them all the time, but it's really important to make sure you're getting enough electrolytes. And when you reduce carbs, it typically can cause a lot of electrolyte loss. So Element is great. Magnesium is also fantastic for really most people. Most people tend to be magnesium deficient. And protein powder. Protein powder is another really helpful one to make sure that you're getting enough protein to help prevent those sugar cravings. Okay, next up from ABM7138, we have tips to get back your metabolisms besides eating slow and losing weight over a longer period of time. So the metabolism is largely going to be driven a lot by our muscle mass. So the most important things, without getting too in the weeds, is to make sure that you're holding on to muscle during the weight loss process or even increasing muscle. That means doing strength training, proper strength training, and eating enough high quality sources of protein. Make sure you check out my whole video on high quality source of protein linked up here. Rosh XEL, how to get defined abs. There's really going to be two factors when it comes to abs being actually visible, and it's gut health as well as body fat percentage. Poor gut health can cause a lot of bloating, where even if you are really low body fat percentage, it won't make it look like you have that defined abs look. So you want to make sure that your gut health is in check. That's where using something like intermittent fasting, removing foods that are tough for your body to break down, and really supporting the migrating motor complex. All of those can help to reduce bloating and improve gut health. This is exactly what I did with my intermittent fasting program. So if you want to check that out, you can find it popped up right here. Really focused on helping to boost that MMC and actually get gut health back. And then the other, of course, is body fat percentage. Usually a body fat percentage of around 20 to 24% is where you will start to see like some definition of abs, but it also just depends on the individual and where they store fat. But that's typically a good healthy range where you can also get some definition of abs too. Okay, from Raz, how does intermittent fasting work for night shift workers? I have a full blog post on this. I'll have it linked down in the description below, but it really is going to actually be pretty similar to regular intermittent fasting, except you're just adjusting it to your wake and sleep windows. But I'll have the blog post linked down in the description below so you can get more of like that step-by-step detail. Sarah's asking, is it true that 16-hour fasting for people with severe IBS can worsen symptoms? I have not seen that to be the case. In fact, I've actually seen it to be really helpful for most people. The only case where perhaps it could be an issue are really specific type of bacterial overgrowths, but that really is more of a specific issue. Typically for most people that I've seen, intermittent fasting is going to turn on the gut cleaning process, the migrating motor complex, which helps to clean out the gut and helps to improve gut health. Tay Fun B, what do you think about keto cycling? Do you think it can help for weight loss? If you want to try it out, I don't see a problem with it, but I usually like to work with something that is going to be more sustainable, and also making sure that it is a meal plan that actually fits your goals. So not everybody has to be so low carb like keto to see results. In fact, keto doesn't necessarily always result in weight loss depending on the way that you do it. Like if you're eating a lot of those keto treats, or if you're having too much fat and not enough protein, that could also not result in weight loss. So I'm just generally not like a strict keto fan, but it does have its place for certain people with extreme blood glucose control issues. Okay, Liza, over 50s and menopause challenges. The biggest things that are important for menopause, but also just for everybody as we age, is that as we age, we have faster bone loss and faster muscle loss. So making sure that you keep that bone integrity is really important. So strength training, so important as we age. Eating enough high quality protein actually becomes even more important as we age, which can also help with the weight loss or fat loss goal as well. So strength training and eating more protein, typically about 25% higher than before, is generally what's needed as we age. Samantha, do you feel it's important to balance your hormones, cortisol, and insulin to lose weight? Hormones are really just messengers telling us like what's happening in our body in response to our environment. So yes, like you do need to balance those, but it's also the things that you do that will help you achieve your goals will balance those, or typically will balance those anyway. So with cortisol, if you're getting poor sleep, if you're really stressed, if you're eating poor diet, all of that will result in higher cortisol levels, but they also all result in typically weight gain, especially around the belly. Or insulin, especially having a lot of high insulin levels, is typically a result of just eating a lot of processed foods or a lot of sugar. So by not eating as much sugar, that is going to help balance out insulin, but it also, of course, will result in the weight loss too. Also from Samantha, how do you feel about the mantra calories in, calories out? Is it simply just math? No, it is not, because the equation is always changing. Also, the way that certain foods impact our body and what it's storing and how it's storing is also going to change. Like, yes, in the short term, you could lose weight by eating 1,000 calories worth of Oreos every single day, and that's it. But because that type of dietary pattern is going to be high in sugar, high in processed foods, low in protein, it can result in a lot of muscle loss, make it so that your hunger really increases, make it so that your metabolism drastically slows down. Overall, it's just not going to make you feel great. It's not going to be sustainable. Yes, you might lose some weight, but you're not losing fat in the same way that you would if you were properly balancing out your food. Another one from Unknown. Question on full fat. You advocate full fat dairy. I've been using fat-free skyr and adding fat portions back with seeds and nuts. Is this why I'm not as full? It could be. There are studies that show that full fat dairy is much more satiating than low fat dairy. But the biggest reason why I prefer using full fat dairy over low fat is because of the nutrient density of full fat. You miss out on a lot of the vitamin K2 when you use the low fat options, and vitamin K2 is what our body needs to have in order to take the calcium that's in that yogurt and actually use it within our bones and take that calcium and put it into our bones and take it out of our arteries. Okay, from T Turk, is it bad for you to eat too much protein? Really, too much of anything is not good. You need to make sure that you're eating enough of the right types of foods. The thing that's great about when you focus on primarily whole food sources of protein is that it essentially self-balances out because the satiety cue is so strong. So as long as you're eating from mostly whole food sources, so things like beef and eggs and yogurt, and not just eating like a bunch of protein cereals, protein bars, protein chips, which are all over the market now, then the body raises satiety hormones and tells your brain you're full, you're satisfied, and you don't need to keep eating. Plus, those whole food sources of protein are also going to have high quality sources of fat in there too. So it's not like just 100% pure protein. But it is also important to note that people are often concerned about kidneys, but there's been a lot of research showing that eating more protein or eating higher amounts of protein doesn't hurt the kidneys. However, if you already have some type of kidney disease, usually from something like really severe insulin resistance, then eating protein or eating higher amounts of protein usually is not recommended, although even that is just kind of disputed right now. Marissa, tips for pregnancy. I'm on bed rest and afraid to gain too much weight and lose muscle. Wow, sympathies. I feel for you. I'm currently pregnant right now, but I'm in more of like that first phase of just first trimester where everything makes me nauseous, and finding what to eat is like a big struggle bus. But important tips is definitely getting enough protein from high quality sources. In fact, there's a lot of research showing that getting at least about 80 to 100 grams of protein per day can help to improve pregnancy outcomes. It also helps you to prevent muscle loss, and it is very nutrient dense. Like beef is one of the best sources of high quality iron that you can get, which is also important for pregnancy. So it's like the biggest first thing I would focus on. Okay, Simply Life with Mia. 8 weeks postpartum / breastfeeding and feel like I'm always starving, struggling with enough milk supply, but I'm eating a ton, not sure what to do. I would definitely talk to a lactation consultant or a midwife, because from my experience, my midwives were talking me through the whole initial parts of breastfeeding, and a lot of it can come down to like the frequency and making sure that you're like have the proper latch. This is not my area of expertise, but that's why talking to a lactation consultant can be really helpful for that. But feeling more hungry during breastfeeding is totally normal. Typically, you're expending an extra 500 calories worth of energy every day when you are breastfeeding. So it's that's like a full meal for most people. So of course, getting enough protein, but but also making sure that you are trying to swap out some of those more nutrient poor, more addictive foods for more high quality foods that are like low or medium glycemic load. That can also be helpful too, to make sure you're getting the nutrient density without the addictive spiral of some of those other like more treat items. A Handmade Girl 77, do we start losing muscle in our 40s? Yes, losing muscle can happen really at any age, but it does start to accelerate as we age, which is why it's very, very, very important to strength train and eat enough protein from high quality sources. Okay, Haley is asking ways to prevent bloating associated with high protein intake. First of all, make sure that you're actually eating most of your protein from whole food sources. So even for myself, I have a protein powder company. Obviously I'm biased, but the way that I use protein is to make, or at least protein powder rather, is to mix it with other high quality nutrient dense source of food too. So I get that protein boost from the protein powder, but I'm also getting in fiber from like chia seeds in a smoothie, or like raspberries or cacao nibs. And then also making sure I'm drinking enough water throughout the day too, and making sure that you're avoiding just having a lot of processed types of protein. So like I mentioned earlier, protein bars, protein chips, protein cereals, all of those can cause more of the issues of constipation and bloating that are associated with a higher protein intake. Hazel Eyes Girl is drinking 2 smoothies a day as your meals okay. If that's how you can fit your meals in and get the nutrient density you need in, then that works. However, there is something to be said about chewing. I am a big fan of trying to implement chewing as much as possible. So even when I have a smoothie, I'll put toppings on top too. So like cacao nibs or some coconut flakes, because chewing helps to kickstart digestion. That's where a lot of the carbohydrate breakdown starts, is actually with chewing. As I'm talking about it, my mouth is literally like starting to water because it's expecting food to come in as I'm talking about chewing, and that's like that initial carb breakdown. Lydia, what are your thoughts on athletic greens? Honestly, I think it tastes horrible. Really, really bad. I did try it out, and that alone is a reason why I would not spend $3 a serving for it. Next up, how to increase satiety. First, get enough protein, 30 to 45 grams per meal. Then add in high quality sources of fat, 1 to 3 servings, really depends on the person, but that's usually a good range. And then add in as much of the low glycemic load, fiber-rich foods possible. Okay, Patrice, what are your thoughts on bulgur? So 1 cup of cooked bulgur has a glycemic load of, it looks like 15.4, and it has 5 to 6 grams of fiber. So 15.4 means it's a medium glycemic load food. And it also doesn't seem to be super high in various nutrients other than manganese and then maybe a bit of magnesium. It does contain gluten, so if you're gluten sensitive, then that is a problem. So if you are going to use it, I just wouldn't center a full meal around it, just making sure to use it as a side. But if you're carb sensitive, then it probably would not work for your goals. Okay, next up, I have flavorless protein powder. How can I make your waffles and pancakes? You can still make it with the exact same recipe, it just won't taste the same. But you might want to add in like other flavors. So you could put in like pumpkin spice if you want to add some seasoning, or some cinnamon, just something to actually add flavor, which I will have the recipe linked up here if you want to check it out. From Angie, how to lower A1C. Walking, strength training, eating low glycemic load, eating blood sugar stabilizing foods like protein, all of those are really great tools that I work with my clients on. That Moment VIP, postpartum and not getting enough sleep. Any advice on exercise days? Walking, like just walk right now, especially if you're not getting sleep. You want to first make sure that you can get sleep back in order and then just eventually build back in exercise. You're not going to get the benefits of muscle recovery right now if you are not sleeping. So first get your sleep down and then start to add in some strength training. But in the meantime, walking outside is a very great tool. Walking outside also helps to expose your eyes to lightness, which helps to balance circadian rhythm too. So overall, that could just be a great tool. Do we need amino acids for a lean body? Amino acids make up protein. So yes, you do need to have that. You just don't need to have it from like a amino acid supplement. You just need protein. From Katie, can you explain how much sodium we should be having? Is 2,300 milligrams still accurate? Short answer, no. Research shows that we have J-shaped needs, which means that if we have too low of sodium, then that can cause some heart issues. If we have way too high sodium, then that also can cause issues. And current research is showing that more of 4 to 6 grams of sodium per day is ideal. I enjoy cardio multiple times a week. Does this change my carb needs? In fact, actually, I've found people who do more cardio tend to do better with less carbs because it doesn't get you on that carbohydrate cycle. Cardio, when you do it right, tends to actually do better with burning fat versus carbs. It's more of a stable energy source, and your heart rate is in a range where you can still use fat as fuel when you're exercising. The higher intensity exercises like strength training or HIIT or sprinting, all of those tend to do better with a little bit more carbs, purely because it does need carbs for that fast energy source. Nicole, I lift while fasted. How long is it okay to wait to eat while still building muscle mass. As long as you still feel good, as long as you're still able to eat all your meals within that eating window that you have, then it shouldn't be a problem to wait even a couple of hours. Research shows that that anabolic window isn't actually really accurate when they say like you need to have protein within like 30 to 60 minutes after your workout. That's really only the case with like extreme athletes. As long as you're getting enough protein within that 24 window after you exercise, that still can result in increased muscle mass. But if you do find that you have trouble getting in enough protein, that's where you would want to widen open your eating window. Is it true if you eat too much protein, it turns to glucose? Essentially, no. This is something that we used to believe. We used to think that this was true in nutrition, but current research is showing that you can eat as much as 100 grams of protein one sitting and it still uses protein. Not that I would advise eating that much in one sitting. Is drinking ACV twice a day too much? As long as it's like 1 or 2 tablespoons worth and it's diluted, it shouldn't be problematic, but also just if you notice that you're not responding well, then obviously don't have the second one. Leslie, basically if you eat enough protein and weight lift, your body shape will change. In short, if you're doing it right, yes. I have the desire to overeat when following your guidelines of protein, fat, and fiber. How can I turn that switch off in my brain to eat only until I'm satiated? First of all, how do you know you're overeating? I think a lot of us think that we're overeating when in reality, we actually need to eat more than what we maybe previously thought. I get this a lot from a lot of my clients where they think that they're overeating because they feel full or because they need to eat more than what they put on their plate, because a lot of people are just so used to eating small portions that they assume they're overeating, when in reality, they're just eating until satiated. If you truly find that you are, quote, overeating, even after you do that assessment, I would reconsider how much protein you're taking in. Maybe you're not eating enough. You can do that calculation, which I have a video on right here. Also, sometimes a clean slate is needed where you just completely get rid of some of those more addictive foods that can bypass satiety. That's where the 7-day detox is a really great tool. I'll also have it link or pop up right here somewhere. I would love recommendations for women nearing menopause. Currently do a vegan diet and restrict bad oils. I do exercise, but I'm wondering if I need to do more light weights instead of cardio now. Yes, essentially as we age, we need to make sure that we're really holding on to muscle to also prevent issues with bones. As you are vegan, it is especially important that you are very, very focused on the quality source of protein that you're eating too. I also recently did a video where I broke down all the different protein sources, including plant-based ones. Really make sure that you're reviewing that. I'll have it linked up here, but really, really make sure that you're reviewing that because not all proteins are the same. Like the thought that you can get a bunch of protein from peanut butter just is not true, and it's not quality, and it's not going to result in the best muscle or bone outcomes. Okay, on the flip side, we have Hannah. I am doing my best to follow the guidelines for protein, but I feel so full. I can barely get it in and feel like I'm eating way past the point of satiety. If I'm forcing food in beyond the point of feeling stuffed, am I fighting against my weight loss goals, or does my body just need to adjust to so much protein? What I recommend in this situation is just trying to first eat the amount of protein that you need and then eat anything else that's left on your plate to the point of where you feel satisfied. I think the problem that people can come across is that they feel the need to eat the entire protein and then also everything else. So maybe it's like a really, really big salad or whatever it might be. Maybe there's a lot of volume from those low glycemic load ingredients. And so you try to eat all of it, including the protein. Just first prioritize on getting that protein in because that is the most important for achieving a weight loss goal, and then eat everything else to satiety. Any tips to reduce bloating? Intermittent fasting, no snacks, drinking enough water, cutting out sugar and processed carbohydrates, and walking. Green leaf, is it possible to lose weight without workouts? Yes, you can, of course, lose weight actually without exercising. The weight loss might not be as sustainable as if you did incorporate strength training though. Strength training, when you eat enough protein as well, does help to hold on to that muscle, which also helps to make sure your metabolism doesn't drop during the weight loss process. Can you dive more into plant proteins, the best way to complete plant proteins, and how to find good quality high diaz plant protein powder? Most plant proteins are really low diaz. The exception is going to be like potato protein powder or even just regular potato, but that does come with a lot of high glycemic load starch, also for not that very much protein. The best options are soy in its various forms, although I really recommend just sticking to fermented soy to make sure it's removing the anti-nutrients. Chickpeas and yellow peas are also some of the better protein options. Although again, as I mentioned earlier, I did a full video breakdown of this, so make sure you check it out, linked up here. And you can can combine proteins, but the amount that you need to eat is so specific. You're essentially just being like a food lab scientist to combine these. Just an example, to get a diet score of 85, you would have to get 15% fava bean, 20% corn, and 65% potato. So you'd have to be going through and having every one of your meals be exactly these ratios, at least for that combination, in order to get a high quality source of protein. Again, this is why I like to stick to more of the higher quality whole food sources like the tempeh if you are going to be more plant-based. Okay, another one from Unknown. Should they eat less protein or use a shorter intermittent fast with more protein? Which works better for fat loss? I would typically always recommend, unless gut health is a big concern, having a shorter fast with enough protein. That's why if you find that maybe you're doing a 16-hour fast, but you can't eat enough protein within that 8-hour eating window, opening it up to like a 14-hour fast and giving yourself a 10-hour eating window in order to eat enough. You have to have that balance between the food and the fast. I love watermelon and other summer fruits. Where do they fit into a weight loss goal, or don't they? When is the best time to eat them? Yes, most fruits actually are going to be low glycemic load. You just have to watch out for the amounts. Typically for some of those higher sugar options, it's going to be about a 1 cup serving. Okay, number 50, starting to see recomposition changes in my 3rd week, and it is such a confusing time with the change in inches but not the scale. I swear it's going up by about 2 to 3 kilograms. This is usually the result of increasing muscle mass while also losing body fat, because when you're losing inches, your body is losing fat. But if you see the scale not moving at the same time, then that's a sign that you are increasing muscle mass, which is a good thing. This is why I don't recommend using the scale. Using things like a tape measure or an InBody are always going to be your better options. Okay, so a lot of high quality protein, fat, and fiber rich foods can actually be found on Thrive Market and delivered directly to your door. So if you want that 30% discount plus a free gift valued up to $60, make sure you head over to thrivemarket.com/autumnbates. Or you can click the link down in the description box below so you don't miss out on the discount. All right, guys, I know that was a really long one, and I mentioned multiple times the whole protein video, so that is one that I really recommend you watch next if you haven't seen it already. You can find it with this video right here. Also, if you're new to my channel and you love this science-backed information, make sure you subscribe right here. Come out new videos every Tuesday and Thursday. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in my next video.